So today we are going to see the object-oriented programming concepts, and in this, some of the concept was left in the last class, so we'll cover today. So the first concept that we'll see today is inheritance. This is a property related to the object-oriented programming, and that property is universal to all the languages. Okay, so actually this is the property of object-oriented programming. So your Python is the object-oriented programming, C++ is the object-oriented programming, Java is the object-oriented programming. So we have different object-oriented programming which support uh, this particular property that is called inheritance. Okay, now let's understand what do we mean by inheritance. So inheritance is nothing but a property in which one object will be taking the property of its parent object. So you can see like the relation between child and parent, there is some property of the parent which is inherit into the child. So maybe it's maybe the physical property or the virtual property, whatever property is, will be moved to their children's. In the same way, in the classes also, if we have two type of classes, if we have a parent class or if we'll have a child class, so in that also the property of the parent class can be accessed or can be inherited by the child class. Now here in the inheritance, the parent class is called base class and the child class is called derived class. Okay, so that you have to say. If I'll say base class is nothing but the parent class, and child class is nothing but derived class. Why we say child class as a derived class? Because it is derived from the base class. Derived means the property of the base class can be accessed into the child class. That's why the child class is called derived class. Okay, now let's go to the theory part of it. It says that inheritance is a way to form new classes using classes that have already been defined. So we have some defined class, and based on the defined class, if we define some new classes or if we create some new classes, that is called inheritance. So as I told you, the property of the old class or the base class will be given to the child class or the derived class. The newly formed classes are called derived classes. The classes that we derive from are called base class. So what it is saying, it is saying that newly formed classes are called derived class, means the child class is called derived class, and the class that we derive from, means the parent class, is called base class. Important benefit of inheritance are code reuse and reduction of complexity of the program. So why we use this type of programming paradigm, or why we use these type of programming property? So the reason is we can reuse the code, or the code that is already used in one class. If we are using the same code in my latest class or in my child class, so I can use them. So that is called reusability. So it promotes the inheritance property of object-oriented programming, promotes reusability, and it will reduce the complexity also. How it will reduce the complexity? It will reduce the complexity by reducing the number of code into the program. So definitely if we use the code which is already written, if we use the same code, or we have the ability to use the same code, so we doesn't have to write the code again if we want to use it. So that's why we use inheritance in object-oriented programming. The derived class override or extend the function of the base class. So what it is saying that the derived class, which is your child class, override means if it want to define the same function, it can define it. That is called overriding. Or extend the function means the function which is already defined in the base class, it will just use it. That is called extension of the function. So either the child class can create the same function or which are already there in the base class, that is called overriding. And if we'll use the same function which is there in the base class, that is called function extension or extension of the function. Let's see one example and try to understand what do we mean by inheritance, and we'll define it with the help of a class. So we have two classes here. You can see here we have the animal class and we have the dog class. Let's talk about animal class. In the animal class, we have the init function. So we know that what is the meaning of init function. Init function is the inbuilt function which is used to initialize the object. So at the time of initialization of object, this particular function will be called, and generally we'll put some attribute of a class into this particular function. Now here we doesn't have any attribute. Instead, it is going to print animal created. Now let's go to the second function in the class, that is called who am I. So when we call who am I, it is just going to print animal because it is from the animal class. It is not taking any attribute, you see. Now when I call eat, then it will say eating. Now you can understand we have three functions here. One is the init, who am I, and eat. Let's see another class. We have another class which is called dog, and in bracket it is written animal. The meaning is that the dog can be derived from animal class. So here dog is the derived class and animal is the base class. Or you can say the animal is the parent class and dog is the child class. Now in the same class we have init function. So either we can define init function or we do not define it. So as I told you, if we derive or if we define any function into the derived class and the same function is already there in the base class, that is called overriding. And if we are using the function which is already there in the base class, that is called extension of the function. Now here, which is true? It is overriding or extension of the function. So you can see here, the same function is already there in the base class. So that is called overriding. Now after that, the definition is it is going to print dog create. Now again we have the same function which is called who am I. The same function is written here, who am I. And here we have eat function. We doesn't have eat function here. Instead we have another function which is called bar. So you can see a new function has defined. So this is a new function. It is neither the overriding nor extension. Now what is this? This is overriding. What is this? This is also overriding. Okay. But if I use eat, that is called extension. Now let's see how we can create the object of a class. So we know how we can create the object of the class. This is the way how we can create the object of the class. Any variable equal to the class name and this function that we have to use. Now when I'll do that, this init function is going to call by default. So you can see here, if I have defined here init function, it is going to print dog created, right? So let's run it. So it says dog created. Okay. Let's do one thing. Let's remove this particular function from here. So what I have done is I have removed the function init function from here, and let's see what output the same thing will give you. Okay, now what I am doing is I am just removing this particular init function from here, and we'll try to understand what output it will give you. So let's run it. Now instead of dog created, it is written animal created. If you can see here, what I have done, I have removed the overridden function from here. So this is the function that is overridden, right? And when I'll execute this, and when I'll execute the object that is created, it says that dog created. It means that the function which is already there will be overwritten by the function that is defined in the child class or the derived class. Now that is called overriding. Now when I'll not use the function here, that is called the extension of the function. So it is saying extension of the function. So which function has been called? So you can see here in the dog class there is no init function. Instead, this function is called, and it says animal created. Animal created. So I think you understood the difference between overriding and the extension of the function. So as I told you, the property of the inheritance is to reusability. We can reuse the code which is already created, right? Now this time it is overriding. Now after that, the same object is calling who am I function. So again it is overriding, yes, because here it is going to execute dog, or it will going to print the dog. It will not going to print the animal. It is not going to print the animal. It is going to print the dog. Okay. Let's talk about this d dot eat. So it is going to print eating. So you can see here in the derived class there is no eat, but I am calling the function of the eat with the help of dog object. Instead, it will call this particular function. So you can see whatever function which is already there here will be just coming into the derived class. Now b dot bark, so bark is already there here, and we doesn't have any bark function here. It is just the function, local function to that class. So it is going to call. So let's see what is the gist in this particular example, or what we understood with this particular example. So in this particular example, we have two classes, animal and dog. So we have two classes, right? Animal class and the dog class. The animal is the base class, the dog is the derived class. The derived class inherits the function of the base class, that we know that the derived class inherit all the functionality which are used in the base class. It is shown that eat method, so here eat method will be inherited, right? The derived class modes existing behavior of the base class showing by the who am I method. So you can see here, this is nothing but the method which is already exists in the local class. So that is called inheritance. Finally, the derived class extend the function of the base class by defining another function which is called bar class. So here the bar class has actually another extension that has been created here, and what we are using eat function we are using, and we can also use who am I also, right? Who am I and init also we can use it. Okay, let's talk about another inheritance example and try to explore some more uh, functionality of it. Okay. Let's say this is a class called person. Inside the person class, we have init function, which is giving the value to the attribute first name and the last name. So first name and last name are the two attributes. After that, we have a function called print name. It is going to print the first name and the last name. Use the person class to create an object and then execute the print name method. So here what we are doing is we are just creating an object of this particular class with the name, first name and the second name, and just will print the name, whatever we uh, have just defined. So here it is going to give you the first name and the last name as the output. Why? Because we have called the print name function. Now let's go and create another function, another class. And here in this particular example, we have a class student. That class student has been created with another class which is called person. Now here you can see, because the person is the base class and the student is the derived class, this is the way how we can do inheritance. Now inside the class, I have written past, means I don't have any definition here. It means I haven't defined anything. Now what I have done is I have created an object X with the class student, and I'll give the name Mike and Olsen. So Mike is the first name, Olsen is the second name. Now X dot print name is going to give you the name of it. So here what is happening here in this particular class, we have created the object of the class, and because it has inherited from the person class, it can use this function as well as this function. It is very simple, right? So it can use this function and this function. So reusability is happening here. Now this is the example that we have seen. Now let's see another thing into the object-oriented programming, or another property of object-oriented programming, which is called polymorphism. Now, the meaning of polymorphism is one thing is there, or one object is there, we can use that with a different way. Okay, we can use it with a different way. Now, like you can have the water. Water is one object. You can use it in the gas form, liquid form, and in the solid form. In the same way, we have one thing and we can use it in different form. Now, let's talk about polymorphism related to object-oriented programming. Now, we can implement polymorphism in object-oriented programming with the help of function. It means we have one function, and this one function can be used by different way. One function can do many things. Okay, if one function can do many things, that is called polymorphism, right? That is called polymorphism. Let's take one example and try to understand what do you mean by polymorphism. So I'm taking one example here of polymorphism. Now let's see this. Okay. Now in this particular example, a simple Python function to demonstrate polymorphism. Now here we have a function called add. Okay. What this function will do is this function is going to add three variables. Now one variable we have taken as a default variable. Okay. Default variable means if I'll call the add function with two variable, then also it will work. If I'll call the add function with three variable, then also it is going to work. Let's see how we have called this particular function. So we have called this particular function in two ways. In one way, we have given two argument. In another way, we have given three argument. So you can see we have one function, but one function could be used in a different way. So how it will be used in a different way, it depends upon how many argument we are passing and which type of argument we are passing. Now here in this case, we are passing integer argument in both the function call, but in one function call, we are calling with three argument, and another function call will be called with the two argument. Okay, let's run it. So once you run it, you will find it out that it is going to print. It is going to give you the answer with this function call as well as this function call. So this function call will give you by adding 2 and 3. This function call will give you the value with adding 2, 3 and 4. So it is giving you 5 and this is giving you 9. That is called polymorphism. Simple way of understanding, right? Let's talk about polymorphism in object-oriented programming and how it is working. So you see here in this particular example, we'll understand. So we have learned that while function can take in different argument, method belongs to the object they act on. So here what is saying is it is also based on the argument. So here we have number of argument and you can put the type also. Now in the object-oriented programming, we generally use type. So which type of object you are passing to the function? It depends upon that. In polymorphism, in Python, polymorphism refers to the way in which different object classes can share the same method name, and those methods can be called from the same place even though a variety of different objects might be passed. Now here what it is saying that the same name of the method will be used in different classes of base class or derived class or different way of, or different type of classes. If we have two classes which are independent, also they can use this polymorphism concept. We'll see the same concept with the help of inheritance also. So that example also we'll see. The method resolution order, that is the method of superclass from left, will be called first. The best way of explaining this is by the example. So here it says that if we call the function which is already there in the base class as well as it is there in the derived class, so it says that the method of superclass from the left will be called first. Let's see with the help of example. So first we'll see the example with no inheritance, and after that we'll see the example with inheritance. Okay. Let's see this particular example. Now in this example, we have two class. One class is a dog class, another class is a cat class. In the dog class, we have init function, and we have another function called speak. In the cat class also we have init function and speak function. So two functions are there. Now speak function of the dog is printing the name of the dog with, say, woof, means how this is the way how a dog will speak. Now this is the speak function where it is going to print the name of the cat and it is going to say meow. So this is the way how cat will be talking. Now after that, two object is created. One object is Nico, another object is Felix. In this Nico, we have created dog object and we have given the name Nico. Now Felix, here we have created the cat object and we have given the name Felix. Now when we'll call Nico.speak, what it is going to print? It is going to print the name of the dog and it will say woof. In the same way, when I'll say Felix.speak, it is going to print the name of the dog and say, sorry, name of the cat and say meow. So this is how it will be done. We'll just run it and you see it is going to print woof and it is going to print meow. So depend upon the object. So this is the object of the dog class, so it will call the speak function of the dog class. If we are calling with the help of the object of the cat class, so it is going to call the function of the cat class. As simple as that. Even though we have two classes, there's two functions, but one of the same way of giving the signature. But depend upon the object, it is going to resolve it. So it will not give you any ambiguity. Instead, it will resolve the ambiguity with the help of which object we are passing. Now the same thing we can do with the help of the for loop also. Let's say we have okay, so here what we are doing is with the help of for loop, we are passing some, we are creating the object and we are passing it. Now here we have two value here. One is the Nico, another is a Flex. Now Nico and Flex we have already created, right? These two objects we have already been created. Now first time the pet value will be Nico. Second time the pet value will be Felix. So you understood that first time it will be called as Nico.speak and the second time it will be called Flex.speak. That's why at the first time when it will call Nico.speak, it will say the name of the dog and it will call the speak of the dog class. Now the second time when I'll say Felix.speak, it is going to call the cat class function, which is speak function of the cat class, right? So this is also a way how we can do that. Let's see the same thing with the help of the function also. We'll create a separate function. The function name is pet speak. Here we are putting the object. So which object we want. So it will be called pet.speak, what object we are passing. So here first time we are passing the object Nico, so it will call Nico.speak, and the second way we are calling Flex, so it will call Flex.speak. As simple as that. So this is also a way how we can call the functions with the help of the loops. But the thing is that you should have these object already been created, otherwise it will give you the error. Okay, let's see some more example and try to understand more thing related to the polymorphism with the help of inheritance. Okay. So what it says that in both cases, we are able to pass in different object type and we obtain object specific result from the same mechanism. Now, a more common practice is to use abstract class and inheritance. Let's say we are using a class. That class will take it as an abstract class and we'll use inheritance. And let's see how this polymorphism works there. An abstract class is one that never expect to be initialized. Now, what is the meaning of that? The abstract class is a class which never going to be initialized. It means that we are not going to create the object of that particular class. Okay, we will not create the object of that class. If we will not create the object of the class, then how it will react? For example, we never have an animal object. Only dog and cat object will be there. Although dog and cat object are derived from the animal class. Let's see this example and try to understand what it is doing. Now here, in this example, we have a class animal. Inside the animal class, we have the function called init function. So init function is for initializing the object. Now what it is taking one argument name and it is putting in the attribute called name. Now the second function is the speak function. Inside the speak function, it says that the abstract method defined by convention only. So here what it is doing is, here is another way of doing that. Instead of returning, it says rise, not implemented error, subclass must implement abstract method. Now what it is doing is, this is just the exceptions we are going to get. It means that because it is abstract method means the method which we are not going to call. The method that we are not going to call. So let's see this, the next code, and we'll try to come in this particular code later on. Now what it says that, subclass must implement abstract method. Now let's go here. We have another class called dog. Inside the dog class, we have animal class, which we have inherit. So animal class is the base class, dog class is the derived class. Here also we have a function called speak, and we are just returning, what we are returning? We are returning the name and says woof. In the same way, we have a function called cat, and we have a function called speak, and we are just returning say meow. Now here you can see we have just created two objects. We haven't created animal object. We have created dog object and we have created cat object. The dog object Fido, and the Fido name we have given. The cat object EC, and the EC we have given as a name. So when we do that, which function is going to call? This function is going to call, because this function is for initializing the object. And because we have inherited, we can use it. Now here what is happening is the speak function, we have overriding. We have done overriding. Overriding means the functionality of this particular function will be overwritten. So it is not going to be used when I'll call it with the help of the dog object or the cat object. Right. So when I'll call with the help of the Fido.speak, it is going to call the speak of the derived class. Here also, because is the object here, EC, and it is calling it with the help of this derive object. Now let's create animal object. Let's say I'm creating A as an animal, and I'll create the animal object, and I'll give the name to that is let's say the cow. Okay, and just run it. Let's run it. Now once we run it, okay, wait a minute. Let's run it. Once we run it, it is going to run perfectly, right? Now we are calling this speak with the help of this object, A object. Yeah. A dot speak. Now here it is going to give you the exception. What is the exception? Not implemented error exceptions is there, and it says that abstract method defined by convention only. Subclass must implement abstract method. So it says that subclass must implement abstract method. The meaning is here what is happening is we don't want to create the object of the animal class. So in that way we can raise one exception. So to raise one exception, we can write rise, and we can write the exception name. This is the exception name, and whatever the message that we want to print, that we can do it. Instead, you can make it return also. You can make it return self, and you can say animal. Now it is not going to give you any error. It says that cow says animal in that way. So now how polymorphism is possible? Polymorphism is possible here because the same function is defined in different classes, and based on the object it will be called. Okay, based on the object it will be called. Now here we don't want to create the object of the animal class, and in the function in the program I have created it, and we have called this particular function. That's why the error is there. Otherwise it will not give you any error in the program. Now in the real world examples of polymorphism, which include opening different file type. So if we want to open the different file types with the help of different tools, that we can do that. Different tools are needed to display Word file, PDF file, or Excel file. Let's say we have a function called open function. Open function will open the file, but which type of file we want to open, it depends upon which name I am putting. Let's say I am putting test.txt, so it will open the txt file. If I say text.doc, it will open the doc file. If I say test.pdf, it will open the PDF. If I say test.excel, it will open the Excel. So in that way, what I want to tell you. Now another way, adding different object plus or minus operator perform arithmetic and concatenation. So with the help of plus, we can actually override the operators also. So in the Python, already your operator is overloaded. If I do plus with the string, it will concatenate it. If I do plus with the numeric value, it will add it. We have some specific methods here in the class. This is a specific method that we have seen. it is going to initialize the object init function or init uh, function we have, it is going to initialize the object. Now we have another function called str function. It is going to print the in the form of a string, the values in the form of a string. Now we have len, it is going to print the value here, and here del, it is going to do another thing. So here we'll see what it is going to print. A book is destroyed. Here it is going to print the self dot pages, so it is going to print the pages here, and str. So here you can see when I'll create an object book with the class book, and what I am putting title of the book, author of the book, and pages of the book. I have just created what? Title of the book, author of the book, and the pages of the book. Now after that, when I'll try to print with the help of the object, so which particular function is going to call? This function is going to call. What is this function? This function is when I'll do that, so we have when I'm going to print it with the help of this, it is going to call this particular function by default. When I'll use len, it is going to call this particular function by default, and when I'll use del or for delete that particular object, it is going to call this particular function. So you can see these are all inbuilt function, and because all those are inbuilt functions related to the class, it will be called by default. So to calling it, once we create the object, and it will be called. Once I'll going to print the object, str function will be called, the method will be called. When I'll use the len function and I'll use the object, this len method will be called, or when I'll use del keyword and book, so this del will be called. So here we have some inbuilt functions also related to the class. Let's see some more examples related to the class. This is the class name student. Inside the class name, we have a global variable branch. Now, in the definition, we have defined a method called init, which is by default method. Once we create the object, this method will be called, and it will initialize the attribute name and age here. Name and age here. Now, after that, we have a method called show methods. If I'll call the show method, it is going to print the name, the age, and the branch. If I call the compare method, it is going to compare the age. So what I am doing is I am passing two objects here. One object is the object which is calling itself, another object that has been created. So between those two objects, it is going to compare the age, and it will return whether which particular age is whether the age is same or not. So if the age is same, it is going to give you true. If the age is not same, it is going to give you false. Let's see, we have created two objects, S1 and S2. It means we have created two students, S1 student and S2 student. S1 student has a name, Anil, and the age 20. S2 student has a name, Sunil, and the age 20. Okay. Now the first, so once I'll do that, which function will be called? This function will be called, right? And two objects will be created. Now after that, when I'll call s1.show, so show function will be called. Here in the show function, the name the age, and the branch is going to print. Now here, what it is going to print? It is going to print this particular branch, right? Because this particular branch is CSE. Now after that, we have changed the S1 branch to IT, and then we'll call S1.show. So once we'll change the branch of this is IT, so it is going to print Anil 20 and IT, right? Previously it has print Anil 20 CSE, now it is printing Anil 20 IT. Now after that, what I am doing is I am doing S2.show. So what it is going to print? It is going to print Sunil 20 and IT. Why IT? Because IT has already been changed by another object. And because this object is a global object, so only one copy of this particular, one copy of this attribute will be created. This object is a global object. So, this attribute is a global attribute. So only one copy of this attribute will be created. Now after that, there is a comparison, S1.compare S2. So you see, this is one object and this is another object. So S1 object has a age 20, S2 object has also a age 20. Now what it is going to print? It is going to print, if it is true, then it is going to print both have same age. If it is false, it will say both have different age. Getting it? So you can see the result of this particular is listed here. It says the first show, it is going to print Anil 20 CSE. Once I'll change the branch to IT, it is going to print Anil 20 IT. Okay. After that, S1.show, it is going to print Anil 20 IT, and then it is going to print S2.show, and it is going to print Sunil 20 and CSE. After that, both have same age. It says that both have same age. It is going to print. Why? Because once we compare it, the age is 20 here, and the logic says that if the age will be same, it will be it will be returning true. Otherwise, it will be returning false. Now, this particular global variable can be accessed here, but the thing is that it is making the copy with different object. Okay. Let's see this example. This example, we have a class A and we have a class B, and C is derived from A and B. Okay? C is the derived class which is derived from base class A and base class B. Now in the base class A, we have init function, we have another function module 1 and module 2. Here also we have init function, we have module 3 and module 4. Here also we have init function, and then we have super.init. Now here why we have written super.init, it will tell that which particular base class init will be called here. After that, module 5 and module 6. Now here we have created only one object, that is C object. Once I'll call the C object, so you can see it is going to call the constructor of A first. Why? Because here we have written super.init. So here, because of that particular code, it is going to call constructor of A. And then it will going to call the constructor of, and it is going to print constructor of C. Right? Let's, okay, because B doesn't have any super class, so it is of no use. I can write it like this also. I can write it like this also. Okay. Now in this, what will happen is it is going to call the constructor of A, and then constructor of A and the constructor of C. Now if I'll do B, then it is called the constructor of B first and then constructor of C. Because I have written here super, so it is going to call the base class only once, base class constructor only once. So super is the keyword which will tell you about the base class.